Chapter 11. Why are you so foolish? Xiaji failed to notice any shift in Cassandra Vol's emotions. Cheerfully, he pulled open the tent's flap. As expected, the undetectable extension charm within the tent had ceased functioning. Cassandra also noticed what was happening inside. I told you so, the undetectable extension charm has worn off. Suddenly, she began speaking somewhat hesitantly. Actually, this tent isn't all that small. For two people, it's quite possible to manage. Not having the undetectable extension charm isn't really a problem either. Before she could finish, Xiaji exclaimed excitedly, "The undetectable extension charm? That's one of my specialties."
What?
Xiaji had already begun casting the spell. With his spell level at maximum, the effect was undeniably impressive. Initially, the tent had only occupied a few square meters, but under Xiaji's spell, its interior space gradually expanded until it reached roughly 80 square meters. Of course, this wasn't his absolute limit, but he felt 80 square meters was more than sufficient for their needs. It's plenty big now. Don't you agree, Cassandra? Xiaji gazed contentedly at the expanded interior. Cassandra maintained a stern expression, huffed softly, and stepped into the tent without further comment. Huh. Xiaji stood utterly bewildered. This girl had been perfectly fine moments ago. Why was she suddenly upset? Still, he didn't dwell on it too much. Girls often acted irrationally at times. Right now, he intended to head out and find some food. Most importantly, Nagini's appetite was bound to be enormous. Nagini, can you stay here and protect Cassandra for me? I'm going to find some food. Nagini nodded, lowering her serpentine head, before coiling her body at the entrance of the tent. Xiaji transformed into an obscurus and soared high into the sky. The forest teemed with all sorts of large animals, and it didn't take long before Xiaji returned, carrying 2 wild deer in tow. Both deer were quite large. Xiaji took only 1 leg each, leaving the rest for Nagini to devour. After consuming both deer, Nagini declared she wouldn't need to eat for the next 2 weeks. Xiaji cast the undetectable extension charm upon an intact pocket of his coat, then allowed the now satiated Nagini to crawl inside and fall asleep. Being near Xiaji made her feel far safer. With Nagini settled, Xiaji lit a fire and prepared the meat, skewering it onto rods for roasting. Having been trapped for over half a year, he hadn't eaten a proper meal in ages. Even before the meat fully cooked, he found himself drooling uncontrollably. As he turned the skewers, he sprinkled on assorted seasonings he'd gathered earlier. Thankfully, he'd possessed excellent culinary skills in his past life, so despite the limited ingredients, the deer meat turned out fragrant and delicious. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. Cassandra was approaching. This girl hadn't eaten all day. Now that she smelled such delicious roasted meat, there was no way she'd remain seated. The meat's almost ready. Won't you join me? Humph. Such crudely roasted meat lacks any refinement. I have no interest whatsoever. Really? Well then, I'll be eating it all myself. In the end, Cassandra succumbed to the temptation of the roasted meat. Blushing furiously, she devoured a large chunk. Xiaji ate with unparalleled delight. Just how long had this body gone without any meat? As he contemplated whether he should have saved another leg, a flash of green light suddenly shot out from the woods. Avada Kedavra. The lethal beam aimed straight toward Cassandra. By the time she heard the incantation and saw the green light, it was far too late for her to dodge. She stood frozen, staring at it in horror. This was the killing curse. Was this how she'd die? Yet she truly didn't wish to perish. At that instant, time seemed to slow down. Cassandra turned her head and gazed at Xiaji, seemingly determined to imprint his image upon her mind in those final moments of life. Upon seeing that green light, Xiaji reacted instantly. Black mist erupted from his body, granting him unparalleled speed. He lunged forward, tackling Cassandra to the ground. He refrained from fully transforming into an obscurus. Doing so would have rendered his strength uncontrollable, and Cassandra's fragile frame might have been crushed under his might. Cassandra watched in stunned silence as this tall boy threw himself atop her, only to feel the fatal green beam strike his back. "No!" she cried out in shock, utterly disbelieving. "He shielded me from the killing curse." Apart from that legendary boy, Harry Potter, no one had ever survived a direct hit from the killing curse. No one at all. Xiaji, she couldn't believe it. The very same boy who'd been happily eating with her moments ago, the one who'd tenderly coaxed her along, now lay dead before her. Why were you so foolish?" Desperate, Cassandra clutched the boy to her chest, her heart drowning in unparalleled sorrow. Tears instantly welled in her beautiful green eyes. This was the second time she'd witnessed someone dying right before her eyes. The first time had been her two closest maids, her sisters in every sense. And each time, she'd stood powerless, utterly unable to intervene. "Cough, cough, Cassandra, please let go of me." Xiaji struggled to break free. This girl possessed astonishing strength. Even with his enhanced strength level 10, she nearly suffocated him. "Why, you're still alive." Cassandra froze, tears still glistening in her eyes, yet her expression now brimmed with elation. Xiaji had no time to respond. He swiftly pulled Cassandra close and shoved her into the tent. He had no idea how many enemies lurked in the woods. Inside the tent, they could temporarily evade surprise attacks involving the killing curse. "Hiss, Nagini! Find him and bring him here at once." Xiaji's expression darkened. It mirrored that of a certain Voldemort perfectly. He was furious now, and the consequences would be severe. Like lightning, Nagini shot forth from Xiaji's pocket and vanished into the woods. Xiaji himself stayed back. Should other enemies be present, his absence would leave Cassandra vulnerable inside the tent. Clearly, this attack had been aimed squarely at Cassandra. Chapter 12. You should definitely keep it safe for future use. "I thought you were dead." Cassandra Vole clapped a hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she gazed at the very much alive Xiaji before her. Xiaji's gloomy expression finally relaxed, and he smiled. Reaching behind his back, he pulled out an iron pot. "Your repair charm worked wonderfully." "I'm not kidding. Look, it even blocked an Avada Kedavra spell." Cassandra stared at the iron pot. There was a small dent in it, clearly where the killing curse had struck, yet it hadn't managed to pierce through. Earlier, when Xiaji had rushed over, he'd used dark mist to pull an iron pot into his oversized robe. Though no spell is known to fully counteract Avada Kedavra, physical barriers remain the only effective defense. If something solid intercepts the spell, it cannot harm its target. Still, this was a highly risky maneuver. Should Xiaji miscalculate the spell's trajectory, or if the pot were breached, the consequences would have been dire. "Seems I ought to treasure this pot. It literally saved my life," Xiaji said cheerfully, examining it closely. Suddenly, he felt his body tighten and realized he'd been pulled into a soft embrace. Cassandra had thrown her arms around him. Xiaji noticed his chest had become damp from her tears. "Of course you must keep it. It saved your life, and it saved mine too." Gently patting Cassandra's back, Xiaji smiled. There. I'll safeguard it for a lifetime. Don't be afraid. Nagini and I are here. No one can harm you." Given his mental age far exceeding his physical years, Xiaji sensed nothing amiss in her behavior. He comforted her much like one would a child. At 11, Cassandra was undeniably a little girl, and Xiaji harbored no inappropriate feelings whatsoever. He wasn't a fan of minors. Yet for Cassandra, things were different. Girls mature early, and this boy had just fearlessly intercepted a killing curse meant for her. How could any girl remain unmoved by such a gesture? After soothing her like a father, Xiaji received an utterly unexpected response. Cassandra rolled her eyes at him. "Ah, good heavens! Let me go at once." Suddenly, shrieks of agony erupted from outside the tent. Xiaji pulled back the tent flap and stepped outside, only to see a blood-soaked man tossed to the ground by Nagini. "Hiss, only one enemy. I've brought him back." "Hiss, excellent. Thank you, Nagini." The man trembled violently upon seeing Xiaji converse with the serpent. He spoke serpentine. This boy was a serpent tongue. In his mind, Those gifted with serpentine speech were nothing short of ruthless, dark wizards. And he dared cast Avada Kedavra at him. Such defiance was unforgivable. Instinctively, he attempted apparition to flee, but his wand had long since vanished. Without a wand, apparition remained impossible. He'd fired off a killing curse and bolted, never confirming whether it struck true. Had he witnessed Xiaji standing unharmed after enduring it, he'd have collapsed from sheer terror. Marcus, is that really you? Cassandra emerged too, instantly recognizing the man. Xiaji crossed his arms, watching the scene unfold alongside Nagini with keen interest. This, then, was Marcus, the steward Cassandra had mentioned. Xiaji knew he'd no longer need to worry about his safety. He already understood that Cassandra had been lured here through deception. Marcus, you tricked me into coming to Albania just to kill me? Why? Cassandra demanded furiously. Prostrate on the ground, Marcus trembled, head bowed, unwilling to respond. Seems he still failed to grasp the situation. Nagini remains hungry, and unless you speak truthfully, I'll feed you to her. Marcus raised his head, horrified at the sight of the massive viper. I'll confess. Someone paid me to eliminate you, Cassandra.
Who?
Who hired you to kill me? Cassandra's voice hardened. I've forgotten. Marcus stared in dread at Nagini's flickering tongue. After sealing the deal, they cast an obliviate charm on me, erasing all memory of them. They left only instructions to kill you, and a hefty sum of galleons. Luring you here was meant to ensure success via the werewolf sorcerers. Marcus, our family treated you generously. Killing me, I might still fathom, but Vanessa and Delia, they regarded you as kin. Why would you harm them too? It was an accident, Cassandra. I never intended to kill them. Those werewolves broke their word, Marcus shuddered. Pardon me? I truly had no choice. I was desperate for gold. Cruciatus curse. Ea! Marcus writhed in agony on the ground. Xiaji stared in shock. The one who'd unleashed the curse wasn't him, but the mere 11-year-old Cassandra herself. Chapter 13. Have you come to kill me too? Although Cassandra Vol was around the same age as Xiaji, the two were completely different from one another. Xiaji had the system as a powerful aid, which allowed him to freely cast the unforgivable curses. Now, however, Cassandra had managed to cast them on her own, and seemingly with excellent results. Xiaji knew full well that without the system's support, casting the unforgivable curses inevitably came with side effects. Still, he made no attempt to stop her. He held no right to prevent anyone from seeking revenge. One cannot preach kindness without first understanding suffering. This was a truth Xiaji deeply understood. If he were in Cassandra's position, he'd likely be even more ruthless. At this moment, Cassandra's heart brimmed with hatred. Because of Marcus, she had lost her childhood companion, a maid who was like a sister to her. Even worse, Marcus's spells had nearly killed Xiaji. Unforgivable. After a long silence, Xiaji reached out and gently grasped Cassandra's trembling hand. That's enough. If you keep this up, your body won't be able to take it. At last, Cassandra broke down, throwing herself into Xiaji's arms and weeping softly. It was the first time she'd ever shown such vulnerability in front of anyone. Cassandra, why don't you head into the tent first? It seems we've got visitors, Xiaji suggested.
No.
I refused to just watch helplessly. No matter what happens, I want to be there. I won't let it happen again. Her eyes burned with determination. Very well. Xiaji gave a subtle signal, and Nagini stepped forward to protect Cassandra. Rustle, rustle. From the woods emerged 5 werewolf wizards. Ha! Marcus, you coward. You got taken down by 2 kids. One sneered. Perfect. I've been needing to hand over a young wizard to the boss. Now I've got 2. TSK, that girl looks so tender. Her flesh must be delicious. The boss'll love her. Wait. Watch out for that giant snake.
Relax.
5 of us can handle 1 snake easily. Completely ignoring Xiaji and Cassandra, the werewolves focused solely on Nagini. To them, those 2 kids were nothing more than easy prey. Xiaozhi wasted no words. He felt no mercy toward this gang of werewolves. With a swift motion, he unleashed a silent Avada Kedavra. A flash of green light, and one werewolf wizard was blasted backward by immense force, crashing to the ground lifeless. The remaining four were stunned. They'd never imagined such a frail-looking kid could wield such devastating power. Seeing Xiaozhi act, Cassandra cast a disarming charm. She couldn't wield Avada Kedavra. The werewolves were strong, seasoned fighters, yet they fell swiftly one after another. One werewolf deflected Cassandra's spell and retaliated with a stunning spell, aiming to capture her alive for his boss. But Nagini lazily flicked its tail, effortlessly blocking the attack. It stayed back, as per Xiaozhi's orders. Its sole duty was to protect Cassandra. Xiaozhi transformed into a swirl of black mist, dodging multiple green spells aimed at him. Then, without even chanting, he retaliated with several Avada Kedavra spells. Soon, only one werewolf remained, his leg wounded by Cassandra's spell. Marcus, lying on the ground, had also fallen silent, killed by one of Xiaozhi's spells. The last werewolf stared at his dead comrades, panic rising within him.
No.
Spare me. Avada Kedavra. Green light flared, and that final werewolf fell dead as well. Just as Xiaozhi exhaled in relief and prepared to lower his wand, he suddenly felt eyes upon him, eyes of terrifying power, right from behind. Such immense magical energy. Could it be Voldemort? But hadn't he been gravely weakened? Before he could turn, he heard Cassandra cry out, "Professor Dumbledore!" Xiaozhi nearly collapsed. Holy crap, Professor Dumbledore? Was this legendary wizard some kind of timing master? How did he appear at exactly this moment? Ugh. I cast Avada Kedavra right in front of Dumbledore. This is bad. I'm panicking here.
Ding.
Issuing urgent mission. The host must gain Professor Dumbledore's forgiveness. On success, reward. 1 Philosopher's Stone. On failure, the system trailed off. Failure means instant death, right? Xiaozhi felt utterly despondent. Given a reward's value, this mission was clearly extremely difficult. With his current abilities, his tactics were far too limited to possibly defeat Dumbledore. Fortunately, his fully leveled Occlumency had remained active at all times. Slowly, Xiaozhi turned around. From the woods emerged an elderly wizard clad in purple robes, tall, slender, with waist-length white hair, crescent-shaped eyes, azure pupils, and a distinctly crooked nose. It was none other than Professor Dumbledore himself. His expression grave, he gazed intently at Xiaozhi. Xiaozhi met his gaze unflinchingly, then spoke first. "Have you come to kill me too?" Chapter 14. The Crux of the Problem. Xiaozhi understood full well that killing those werewolf wizards was completely justified. After all, it was purely self-defense. The crux of the issue lay solely in the fact that Xiaozhi had used the Avada Kedavra curse, and what's more, he had executed it with exceptional proficiency. At this very moment, Professor Dumbledore was extremely sensitive. After all, Tom Riddle hadn't yet been fully eradicated. He absolutely wouldn't tolerate the emergence of a second Dark Lord. Thus, upon witnessing 11-year-old Xiaozhi unleash such a powerful Avada Kedavra spell without hesitation, one can only imagine how complex and shocked Professor Dumbledore must have felt. Naturally, this brought to mind another young individual from his past. If Xiaozhi could convince Professor Dumbledore that he'd had no choice but to resort to the unforgivable curses, then there remained a chance of gaining his forgiveness. As for why Xiaozhi wielded the Avada Kedavra spell so skillfully, he already had a plan in mind. Therefore, the first thing Xiaozhi did was seize the initiative verbally, then skillfully divert Professor Dumbledore's attention, shifting it away from the fact that he'd used the unforgivable curses toward a desire to understand what had befallen him. "Have you come to kill me too?" Upon hearing this, Professor Dumbledore's expression shifted noticeably. "Kill you? No. Of course I'm not here to kill you. Why would you think such a thing? In truth, I've come to Albania specifically to deliver this letter to you." Professor Dumbledore took a letter from within his robes. This is your admission letter to Hogwarts. We intended to send it to you the day before yesterday, but the owls couldn't locate you, so I employed a few minor spells to discover your whereabouts. Before he could finish, Xiaji excitedly interrupted him. So, you've come to rescue me? This constituted Xiaji's second strategic move, portraying himself as a victim, thereby drawing Professor Dumbledore's focus toward his own tragic circumstances. Xiaji knew full well that Professor Dumbledore wasn't omniscient. It was perfectly normal for him not to know that Xiaji had been captured by werewolves. The fact that Professor Dumbledore personally delivered this letter was undoubtedly coincidental. He must have been handling some other business and decided to look for Xiaji along the way. After all, Hogwarts always assigned a professor to guide Muggle-born students after sending their admission letters. Yet this duty had eluded Professor Dumbledore for many years. Regardless of the reasons, this circumstance worked perfectly in Xiaji's favor. Rescue you? Professor Dumbledore appeared puzzled. Child, can you tell me what happened to you? Weren't you sent to save me? Well, but since you've brought me this letter, you must know my true name. Xiaji asked eagerly. Sir, do you recall what my previous name was? For certain reasons, I can't recall much from the past. His eyes gazed sincerely into those of Professor Dumbledore. Simultaneously, the Levi Corpus charm activated. At the precise moment he mentioned certain reasons, vivid images flashed through his mind. The werewolf wizard Rex torturing him with the Cruciatus curse. These were genuine memories, fragments buried deep within Xiaji's current body, now resurfacing. This was merely one of several particularly vivid recollections. Xiaji knew Professor Dumbledore would undoubtedly attempt legitimacy on him. Sure enough, Professor Dumbledore's expression shifted. He'd perceived those images. Professor Dumbledore understood all too well that prolonged exposure to the Cruciatus curse inflicted indelible harm upon memory, and even the soul itself. Hadn't Neville Longbottom's parents gone mad after enduring such torment? This realization further cemented Professor Dumbledore's belief in Xiaji's story. He stepped forward and handed the letter to Xiaji. Your name is Xiaji. This time, Xiaji nearly lost his composure. The original body's owner also bore the name Xiaji. Was this mere coincidence? His heart churned wildly, yet outwardly he remained utterly calm. Seems I truly cherish this name. Even without recalling my past one, I chose to adopt it again. People invariably retain vivid memories of what they hold most dear. It becomes ingrained in their very essence. Your name likely represents precisely that. Might I ask to rest inside your splendid tent for a moment? I'm quite elderly now, and after traveling such a distance, a brief respite would be most welcome. Professor Dumbledore smiled gently. We could sit down and converse at length. I'd be honored to hear your story, Xiaji. Of course, sir. Xiaji exhaled softly in relief. So long as Professor Dumbledore agreed to listen calmly, without preconceived notions, half the battle was won. After all, the mission required only his forgiveness, not outright trust. The system had even granted him the Philosopher's Stone as a reward, an item capable of transmuting base metals into gold, which Xiaji deeply desired. Chapter 15. Xiaji's scars are horrifying. Cassandra Vole is moved to tears. Chapter 15. Xiaji's horrific scars. Cassandra Vole in tears. Dumbledore paid no heed to the corpse of the werewolf wizard lying on the ground. He could more or less guess what had transpired. What truly concerned him was how Xiaji managed to wield the unforgivable curses with such proficiency. Xiaji hadn't misjudged this at all. As he passed by Nagini, Dumbledore cast a rather complex glance at the massive snake. Nagini stared back at Dumbledore warily. It no longer remembered him at all. It simply perceived this old man as a grave threat. Dumbledore merely glanced at Nagini, then said nothing further before entering the tent. This tent certainly doesn't appear as splendid on the inside as it does from the outside, he remarked. Indeed, Xiaji had only repaired the tent. Its interior remained completely empty. He hadn't yet had time to arrange anything when numerous events unfolded. Dumbledore waved his wand lightly, and several broken wooden fragments on the floor transformed into 3 elegant chairs and a coffee table. Given how sweltering it is today, I recommend drinking some chilled pumpkin juice. With that, 3 glasses of chilled pumpkin juice materialized on the table. Xiaji stared in utter disbelief as Dumbledore conjured those drinks. This is merely a trivial little trick. Now then, I believe we can have a proper conversation. And, Miss Vole, why exactly are you here? Your father has been quite distraught over your disappearance. Dumbledore stretched his legs out, clearly exhausted. Dumbledore recognized Mr. Vole, which meant he also knew Cassandra. Professor, Xiaji had to use the Avada Kedavra curse to protect me, Cassandra hurriedly explained, visibly anxious. Those werewolves intended to capture and devour me. She ignored Dumbledore's question and instead rushed to defend Xiaji, which deeply touched him. Now, Miss Vole, calm down. I have no intention of sending Xiaji to Azkaban. After all, I'm no Auror, and this place lies far outside the jurisdiction of the British Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore soothed Cassandra. Then his gaze shifted back to Xiaji. Truthfully, I can't recall anything from the past half-month. Xiaji hesitated. He had endured the Cruciatus curse starting exactly half a month ago. That much was undeniable. He dared not exaggerate. He knew Dumbledore could easily deduce both the timing and nature of the curses from his injuries. May I see your scars, my child? As expected, Dumbledore requested to inspect his scars. Xiaji nodded and removed his shirt. His pale skin was entirely covered in countless scars. Dumbledore took one glance and inhaled sharply in shock. The original owner had endured torture for half a year, not merely the Cruciatus curse, but numerous other vile forms of dark magic. This resulted in Xiaji's body being riddled with all manner of scars. Some curses hadn't even fully dissipated by now. Under such inhumane torment, the original owner had somehow endured for half a year, an achievement Xiaji found utterly astonishing. Upon gradually recalling those harrowing memories, he fell silent. The original owner had truly suffered beyond measure. Oh, heavens! Cassandra gasped upon seeing those scars, overcome with unbearable sorrow. These were all done by them? Her voice trembled, tears welling in her eyes. You fought them while bearing such wounds? I had no idea you sustained so many injuries. Even so, you still plan to confront them again? Xiaji nodded. There are many other children imprisoned just like me. I must rescue them. Rescuing those children isn't solely your responsibility, Xiaji, Dumbledore replied gently. But I have no idea who to ask for help. I can't even recall who I am, Xiaji lowered his head. Dumbledore waved his wand, swiftly purging the lingering curses embedded within Xiaji's scars. Drink some pumpkin juice. It's quite refreshing when chilled. Don't worry about those children. I'll ensure they're freed. You can trust me on that. Dumbledore winked. Now, tell me, how did you manage to escape? Dumbledore's magical prowess was unparalleled. Within moments, he'd eradicated all curses from Xiaji's body. His azure eyes refocused on Xiaji. With those curses removed, Xiaji felt an unprecedented sense of ease. Noticing Dumbledore's gaze, he realized the professor had once again activated legilimency. I truly have no idea. At the time, that man was still torturing me. Somehow, dark mist began emanating from my body, and I transformed into a cloud of black fog. Escaping the cage was effortless. Once outside, I struck him down and took his wand. As he spoke, Xiaji employed a clemency, conjuring a false mental image of those events. Of course, this was entirely fabricated. In reality, he'd used the Imperio curse to subdue Rex. That truth, naturally, had to remain concealed. Black mist? You remained conscious after turning into mist. Dumbledore appeared astonished. From Xiaji's mental projection, he discerned unmistakable traces of an obscurus. Chapter 16. You're so badly injured, yet still thinking of fighting? Xiaji turned out to be an obscurus, one who could fully control his own powers, no less. Only one such person had ever been seen by him, many years ago. Professor Dumbledore speculated that Xiaoji's obscurus abilities had manifested right before he lost his memories. Xiaoji nodded in confirmation, indicating he had indeed been fully conscious at the time. Then, his form transformed into a swirl of black mist, circling once inside the tent before reverting back to human shape and sitting down once more. Professor Dumbledore watched him with admiration as he demonstrated his control over the obscurus state. It was evident he had mastered it completely. Curious, Cassandra Vole spoke up. Professor, do you know what this ability of Xiaoji's to transform into mist is called? It's the power of an obscurus, Miss Vole. I assume you've heard of it.
What?
Xiaoji is an obscurus? I've heard that obscurus individuals rarely survive past the age of 11. Does that mean? Cassandra turned towards Xiaoji, visibly anxious. He had endured so many hardships, yet was fated to not live past 11 years old? Her heart ached at the thought. There's no need to worry, Miss Vole. Xiaoji is quite special. He has complete command over his obscurus powers. I'm certain he'll safely make it past his 11th birthday. Professor Dumbledore reassured her patiently. May I ask how you came to master the Avada Kedavra curse? Finally, the professor posed the crucial question. The day I awoke, someone was torturing me with the Cruciatus curse. At the time, I had no idea what kind of power that was, nor why I was there, nor who I even was, Xiaoji replied calmly. Cassandra pressed her lips tightly together upon hearing this. The professor gave a nod, then tapped his wand gently, refilling Xiaoji's cup with pumpkin juice. Later, I escaped using my obscurus abilities. It was effortless, and I managed to overpower that person, Xiaoji continued, lost in deep recollection. I took his wand, knowing it was what he'd used to torment me. As he spoke, the shield charm activated, projecting vivid images into his mind. From him, I learned everything about the wizarding world. Then, wielding his wand, I tried casting that same spell, and discovered I could perform it myself. You cast the Cruciatus curse at him?
Yes.
But suddenly, he drew a second wand from his sleeve and chanted a completely unfamiliar spell. I saw a flash of green light shooting toward me. Instinctively, I turned into mist to dodge it. He attempted to kill you with Avada Kedavra. Xiaoji nodded. I didn't yet know it was called Avada Kedavra. I hid behind the cage, waved his stolen wand, and repeated the words he'd just spoken. A green beam shot forth, striking him. Only later did I realize that spell was lethal. Child, this isn't your fault. Had he cast a stunning spell instead, he'd have survived. Professor Dumbledore comforted him. By now, he understood. Xiaoji's mastery of magic stemmed from his obscurus abilities. He'd merely observed the spell once and instinctively replicated it in retaliation. Thus, Xiaoji hadn't deliberately aimed to use an unforgivable curse. He'd only learned them from those werewolf wizards. Had even one of them shown mercy, had they cast a non-lethal spell, they'd have survived, merely knocked unconscious by Xiaoji's counterspell. Their deaths, in essence, were entirely deserved. As for why Xiaoji harbored such hatred as required to cast Avada Kedavra, that was simple. They'd tortured him relentlessly. Of course he'd feel animosity toward them. Wasn't that perfectly natural? Especially in battle, such emotions would naturally intensify. Unforgivable curses are so named due to their irreversible effects, just like the Cruciatus curse, which permanently damaged your memories. Therefore, child, you must avoid using such dark magic in the future. It harms others irreparably and corrupts the caster's soul. Very well, I'll try to abstain. Though, realistically, these are the only spells I know, Xiaoji replied, though privately he intended to use them whenever necessary. After all, if others sought his life, why shouldn't he defend himself? He wasn't some saint. Professor Dumbledore smiled. Why not open your acceptance letter? Come to Hogwarts. I happen to be its headmaster. There, you'll learn countless wondrous spells and make many friends. Remember always, faith in love is paramount. Understood, Xiaoji replied cheerfully. The professor then averted his gaze. Xiaoji knew at once. Dumbledore's legitimacy had finally ceased.
Ding.
Congratulations, host. You've earned Professor Dumbledore's forgiveness. Reward: 1 Philosopher's Stone. Would you like to claim it now? Not at the moment. Xiaji decided to wait until the professor departed before claiming it. He exhaled deeply in relief. Obtaining that stone had proven quite difficult. Sir, may I accompany you to rescue those children? I'm quite powerful. I'd be of great help. Xiaji wanted to witness their downfall firsthand. He also longed to see how the greatest white wizard of the age wielded his might. Before Dumbledore could respond, Cassandra stood abruptly, tears glistening in her eyes. You're gravely injured, yet still think of fighting? Your priority should be healing. Merlin's beard, I've never seen anyone with so many wounds. How can you neglect your own well-being? Miss Vole speaks wisely, Xiaji. You must rest and recuperate. I've only partially removed curses affecting you, and you'll need treatment at St. Mungo's. Leave the children's rescue to me. You should trust your future headmaster. Chapter 17. You are the most important person to me. Xiaji stood there momentarily stunned. To be honest, he felt deeply touched by how much Cassandra Vole cared for him. Yet, there was no way he'd give up on seeking out Fenrir Greyback to settle the score. If he walked away now, what would become of his mission? What about his rewards? He stood to gain a treasure chest and 2 skill points. This was a mission assigned by the system from the very beginning. Had it not been for meeting Cassandra along the way, he'd likely already be unleashing Avada Kedavra spells at the werewolf encampment. Cassandra, Professor Dumbledore, I truly appreciate all your concern for me, Xiaji said, his expression turning melancholic. You must understand, I was imprisoned and tortured for so long. Even though I've lost most of my memories over the past half-month, you have no idea what I've endured. As he spoke, he lifted his head, his sorrowful gaze drifting between Cassandra and Dumbledore. Unbeknownst to him, his +10 charisma stat was constantly exerting its effect. Even Dumbledore failed to notice anything amiss. He merely sensed a warm, approachable aura emanating from this child. That was precisely why Dumbledore lowered his guard so quickly. Individuals like Voldemort simply lacked such qualities. Witnessing the glistening tears in Xiaji's eyes, Cassandra felt as though her heart had been struck by a hammer. I understand how you feel, Xiaji, but your health. Cassandra, do you realize how much I hate them? Even if I can't strike the blow myself, I must witness them receive their just punishment. Otherwise, I'll spend the rest of my life shrouded in darkness. Besides, my body can surely endure a few more days of rest, Xiaji pleaded earnestly. So, please let me go. With Professor Dumbledore here, I'll be perfectly safe. And you know full well how capable I am. Under the influence of his +10 charisma, both Dumbledore and Cassandra gradually immersed themselves in the sorrowful atmosphere he crafted. It seemed that refusing his request would cause him to collapse from grief on the spot. Cassandra's heart softened instantly upon seeing his tearful expression. Good heavens, he was so pitiable. Wanting to witness his tormentors punished wasn't wrong at all. Perhaps she should allow him to go. She'd simply arrange for the finest healers afterward. Humph. What does it matter to me whether you go or not? Go ahead if you wish. Why even ask me? Cassandra turned away, feigning indifference. Of course I'd ask you. You're my first friend, the most important person to me, Xiaji replied solemnly. And he wasn't lying. Technically, Cassandra was indeed his first female friend. One must remember how Xiaji obtained the Grand Magician template, 30 years of solitude, ending in utter loneliness. Truly tragic. Who's your friend? I'd never be friends with a silly kid like you. Cassandra's face flushed crimson. She spun toward the 10 exit, then paused. Just don't recklessly charge forward. And absolutely don't foolishly shield others from spells. I refuse to have your body carried back to me as a corpse. With that, she dashed outside, though her bright red ears gave away her true emotions. Good heavens, he called me the most important person to him. Stay calm, Cassandra. Dumbledore watched this exchange with a smile, further lowering his guard towards Xiaji. At the very least, this boy wouldn't grow up to become another Voldemort. He possessed emotions, and those who feel emotions understand love. Voldemort could never grasp love's true power. Youth truly is wonderful. Bonds formed now are invaluable, Dumbledore mused. Very well, I'll accompany you, child. But heed my words, never recklessly charge at enemies. Xiaji nodded eagerly in agreement. After a pause, Dumbledore added, if possible, try not to use those spells. Though, should circumstances demand it, prioritize your own safety above all else. Xiaji blinked. What did that imply? Was he hinting that under dire circumstances, Xiaji might employ the unforgivable curses? Upon seeing Xiaji nod once more, Dumbledore rose to his feet. Rest well here now. I must send a message and gather allies. Many children have likely been captured. And I must inform Mr. Vole. He's undoubtedly worried sick about Miss Vole. You've surely not had proper rest in ages. Sleep now. At dawn, I'll summon you. With a flick of his wand, Dumbledore transformed the chair Xiaji had occupied into a lavish bed draped in velvet. It looked incredibly comfortable. Xiaji felt drowsy just gazing at it.
Cool.
Xiaji exclaimed, envious of Dumbledore's transfiguration prowess. What magic is this? Could you teach it to me? Of course. This is transfiguration. It requires no specific incantation, only focused mental visualization of the desired transformation. Dumbledore set aside his errands, eager to share transfiguration's fundamentals with Xiaji, reliving his days as Professor McGonagall's predecessor. How could anyone refuse Xiaji's requests? Even the greatest wizard couldn't resist the effects of his +10 charisma. After all, this ability transcended ordinary magic, being a product of the system itself. At Hogwarts, Professor McGonagall is a transfiguration master. Once enrolled, you'll receive deeper instruction from her. Chapter 18. Mastery of Divination. Professor Dumbledore truly lived up to his reputation as a master of transfiguration. His explanations were both profound and easy to grasp. Xiaji listened attentively, and soon changes began appearing on his status panel. Talents: Obscurus, Parseltongue, highest level. Dark Magic Mastery, 9. Transfiguration Mastery, 1. Divination Mastery, 0. With the boost from his 10-point intelligence stat and Professor Dumbledore's guidance, Xiaji's Transfiguration Mastery rose from 0 to 1. One should never underestimate this single point of mastery. This wasn't merely a boost in transfiguration talent, it was actual mastery of the skill itself. With just this 1 point, Xiaji's transfiguration abilities now matched those of a fifth-year student at Hogwarts. Enhanced by his 10-point intelligence, Xiaji absorbed knowledge at an astonishing rate. More often than not, once he understood something, he instantly mastered it. Waving his wand, Xiaji caused a piece of broken wood to twist and reshape itself into the form of a bed. It still appeared somewhat rough and lacked the elegance of the bed conjured by Professor Dumbledore, but it served its purpose perfectly.
Oh.
If this had occurred in a Hogwarts classroom, I would have awarded you a full 20 points. I'm certain Professor McGonagall would be absolutely delighted to see this. Professor Dumbledore was genuinely astounded. Most beginners learning transfiguration started by turning matches into needles. Yet here was Xiaji, having just begun studying the subject, already capable of transforming raw wood into an entire bed. His magical talent was truly unparalleled. Even legendary figures like Merlin would pale in comparison. It's all thanks to your excellent teaching, Professor Dumbledore. I'd wager you once served as Hogwarts' finest transfiguration instructor. I haven't blushed this much since Madame Pomfrey complimented my pink earmuffs, Professor Dumbledore replied cheerfully. I've never encountered a young wizard with such extraordinary talent, Xiaji. There's no need for such humility. Now, we've wasted quite some time. Both you and Cassandra must be exhausted. Fortunately, we now have 2 beds at our disposal. Professor Dumbledore moved the bed conjured by Xiaji to the other side of the tent, then conjured a curtain to separate the 2 beds. After exchanging goodnight wishes, Xiaji lay down on his own makeshift bed. Though it lacked refinement, it was undeniably comfortable. Ever since transmigrating, This was the first time he'd gotten to rest on a proper bed. Just then, he heard hurried, soft footsteps. Cassandra had also been persuaded by Professor Dumbledore to rest. Yet, hidden behind the curtain, Xiaji couldn't see her. SSSSS. Nagini slithered inside and curled up inside Xiaji's pocket. Xiaji found this peculiar. For some reason, Professor Dumbledore never once asked about Nagini, nor even acknowledged her existence. It was almost as if he pretended she didn't exist at all. That was probably for the best. It spared Xiaji the trouble of fabricating excuses. Maintaining false memories using the Levi Corpus technique was exhausting. It took real skill to infiltrate Voldemort's inner circle as a spy, especially given that Voldemort wielded legilimency without restraint. Professor Dumbledore, however, remained far more reasonable. Settling comfortably into bed, Xiaji opened his status panel to review his recent gains. He soon noticed that one skill point remained unspent.
I'll use it now.
But where should I allocate it? Dark Magic Mastery 9. Transfiguration Mastery 1. Divination Mastery 0. Xiaji's gaze abruptly landed on Divination Mastery. If I invest this point into Divination Mastery, will I instantly master divination itself?
Ding.
By allocating this point to Divination Mastery, the host will immediately gain proficiency in divination techniques. The system promptly responded, exactly as expected. Xiaji resolved to invest this single skill point into Divination Mastery. Divination demanded immense natural talent. Without it, no amount of effort could ever lead to true progress in this field. Yet with the system's assistance, all obstacles vanished. Xiaji spoke to the panel. System, allocate this skill point to Divination Mastery.
Ding.
Skill point allocation successful. Divination Mastery +1. At that very instant, Xiaji felt a sharp sensation at his brow, as though something had pierced through it. Simultaneously, an unfathomable force descended from beyond the heavens, connecting directly to his forehead.
Ding.
The host's heavenly eye has been activated. Thanks to this increase in divination mastery, the host now possesses divination abilities. Specifically, the host may foresee any events that will occur to any target within the next 3 days, excluding the host himself. Note: the heavenly eye consumes vast amounts of energy, so it must only be activated when necessary. Excluding myself? So I can't predict my own future?
Ding.
The host's divination mastery stands at only 1 point. Thus, the host lacks the ability to foresee his own fate. Still, this was more than satisfactory. In the original narrative, even Professor Trelawney, a natural divination prodigy, couldn't reliably trigger prophecies at will. Besides, while his current divination range was limited to 3 days, he still had room to grow. Xiaji resolved to wait until tomorrow, after destroying the werewolf stronghold and claiming 2 additional skill points, then investing them all into divination. SSSSS. Nagini, come out please. Rubbing his hands together eagerly, Xiaji suddenly felt wide awake. He couldn't wait to test his new divination abilities. He couldn't disturb Professor Dumbledore or Cassandra, so Nagini was his only available test subject. Chapter 19. Crisis Detection Talent. Nagini once again crawled out from Xiaji's pocket. She raised her head to look at Xiaji, wondering why he'd called her out. Hiss, is there something you need? Xiaji stroked the massive snake's head in front of him. Hiss, sorry to disturb your rest, but I want you to help me test something. It won't take long. Nagini nodded, then gazed at Xiaji curiously, unsure of what he intended to test. Staring at Nagini, Xiaji activated the heavenly eye between his brows. He felt a warmth there, and then a stream of magical energy shot forth from his forehead, striking Nagini's body. At that moment, Xiaji couldn't see himself, so he had no idea that his pupils had turned silver. He felt an odd sensation. It seemed as though he was floating upward, toward Nagini. Moments later, he noticed countless strands of light, some bright, some dim, covering Nagini's body. It suddenly dawned on him. These were Nagini's fate lines. Each one represented a possible future path she might follow. The brighter a fate line appeared, the greater the likelihood that Nagini would actually experience it. Xiaozhi realized that his goal was to identify the brightest fate line of all. To alter that path, he'd need to locate the key point where changes could occur. Soon, he found the brightest fate line belonging to Nagini. His consciousness immersed itself within it. He found himself transformed into Nagini, now simulating everything she would experience along that path. It stared intently at that handsome young man before it. The boy then shook his head, half laughing, half annoyed, before tucking it back into his pocket. Xiaozhi understood that this boy was none other than himself, but why did he seem so exasperated? Yet soon, he grasped the reason for that expression. The simulation of Nagini's next 3 days began. Day 1, sleeping. On day 2, something finally changed. It crawled out of the pocket. Then it slipped into another object. Before doing so, it noticed that the handsome boy was inside a lovely bedroom. Soon after, it saw nothing else. The object it entered resembled a ring. Notably, it felt far more comfortable than the pocket. Then it went back to sleep. Day 3. Sleeping once more. The prophecy ended there. Xiaozhi emerged from that state. Once again, countless strands of light appeared before his eyes. He refrained from touching any other fate lines, instead exiting the prophetic state and deactivating the heavenly eye. Apparently, Nagini would spend those 3 days entirely asleep. His prophecy had turned out utterly useless. Xiaozhi shook his head, both amused and exasperated. Well, at least his own reaction had been accurately predicted. He tucked Nagini back into his pocket, then recalled that ring mentioned earlier. Had he seized it himself later on? Or was it a magical item granted as a reward by the system? Or perhaps, after glimpsing the future, he'd realized that keeping Nagini inside a ring would be far more convenient than a pocket. Thus, he bought a ring, cast the undetectable extension charm upon it, thereby triggering this particular fate line. Currently, his skill level in prophecy was minimal. He still couldn't independently foresee major future events, nor could he glimpse even fragments of the future via crystal balls or similar tools. However, he could now predict specific individuals' futures. To reach the level of prophetic ability occasionally displayed by Triton, he'd need to invest many more skill points into this area. This underscored just how difficult prophecy truly was. Even possessing innate talent wouldn't guarantee progress. It was exceptionally hard, especially without the aid of a system.
Ding.
Congratulations, host. You've successfully completed your first prophecy. As a reward, you've earned the talent of crisis awareness. Crisis awareness talent? What's that?
Ding.
This is a rare accompanying talent exclusive to prophets. With this ability, the host can sense any imminent dangers occurring within the next 10 seconds. Xiaozhi understood now. It resembled Spider-Man's spider sense. Should any perilous situation arise within 10 seconds, this talent would activate. It would then instantly project to him images of his own failure within that crisis. Undeniably, this talent was absurdly powerful. It essentially rendered Xiaozhi practically invincible. He imagined himself later on, effortlessly dodging multiple curses like Avada Kedavra, then proudly declaring, "I anticipated your anticipation." Just thinking of it sent shivers down his spine. Lying back on his bed, Xiaozhi felt elated. Yet, after consecutive battles, his body was utterly exhausted. Adding to that, the recent prophetic exercise had drained much of his mental energy. Unconsciously, he drifted off into deep sleep. For the first time in over half a year, this body experienced such peaceful, undisturbed slumber. Suddenly, the curtain shifted slightly. A tiny figure slipped beneath it. Cassandra sat down on the floor beside the bed, elbows propped against the mattress, her snow-white palms cradling her delicate face. She gazed quietly at Xiaozhi, now fast asleep, and couldn't help but smile. "I'm the most important person to him." Xiaozhi remained undisturbed. The talent of crisis awareness stayed dormant. After all, this certainly wasn't any sort of danger, right? Chapter 20. Cassandra Vol's Message. Xiaozhi slept exceptionally soundly this time. When he was awakened by Professor Dumbledore, it was already noon the following day. He soon noticed a note resting on his pillow. It was a message left by Cassandra. Xiaji, this morning, my mom and dad came to visit, so I had to go back home with them. Seeing that you were still fast asleep, none of us wanted to disturb you. When my mom heard that I'd almost been struck by the killing curse, she nearly fainted. Before leaving, they kept talking about how they wanted to repay you for saving my life. Of course, you've saved me more than once, even shielding me from that killing curse. Please don't be so reckless in the future. How can you possibly take curses meant for someone else? Upon hearing what happened to you, my mom couldn't help but cry. My dad said he'd reserve the finest ward at St. Mungo's for you and arrange for the best healers. I think you'd be much better off staying at my house. My home has far better accommodations than any hospital room. Well, I look forward to seeing you again soon. Your most important, crossed-out friend, Cassandra. Xiaji folded the note carefully and placed it into another intact pocket. For a moment, he felt a bit melancholic. But it was probably better this way. Cassandra had left. Today, he was heading to a very dangerous place, one utterly unfit for her to accompany him. Snapping back to reality, he noticed Professor Dumbledore seated on a chair beside his bed, smiling gently at him. Partings are meant to make reunions all the sweeter, my child. Sometimes, this isn't such a bad thing at all. It seemed Dumbledore had been sitting there quietly, waiting for him to finish reading the note. Xiaji's face flushed slightly as he spoke sheepishly. Professor Dumbledore, I fear I've wasted quite a bit of your time. He hadn't expected himself to sleep straight through until noon the next day. What a waste of time. Not at all. The reinforcements I summoned have only just arrived. Perhaps we can even enjoy lunch before setting off. Xiaji followed Dumbledore outside the tent. The camp, which had been in disarray the night before, was now spotlessly clean. All traces of the werewolf wizards' bodies had vanished. Several brand-new large tents now stood within the camp, with numerous individuals bustling about. Are these your few helpers? Oh, absolutely. They're essential, given that we still have no idea where those children are. For the next few days, we'll be staying here, carefully conducting our search. Dumbledore glanced down at Xiaji. I also considered that if each child's situation mirrors yours, they'd require immediate medical attention. Thus, I've summoned several healers from St. Mungo's. After lunch, I'd like you to head to that white tent and have Madame Pomfrey examine you. She's Hogwarts' resident healer, and trust me, her skills are unparalleled. It took me quite some effort to persuade her to join us at Hogwarts. Professor Dumbledore, actually, I know where their gathering point is, so there's no need to search. With some luck, we'll find them today. That's wonderful news. Every day we save those children is one less day they endure suffering. Dumbledore beamed with joy. After lunch, Xiaji prepared to lead them. He made no move toward Madame Pomfrey. From what he knew of her, if she saw his injuries, he'd never be allowed to leave her care. In the original story, she even kicked Dumbledore out of a hospital ward. The group assembled swiftly. All were Aurors from magical authorities across the world. This incident had alarmed every nation's magical community. Those werewolf wizards had abducted countless children worldwide. Previously, their efforts had yielded no results, but now, with confirmed intelligence and Dumbledore at the helm, magical authorities from every country dispatched elite Aurors, determined to exterminate those monstrous werewolves and rescue the trapped children. Minister Fudge had only recently taken office and remained entirely obedient to Dumbledore, so Britain contributed an especially large contingent of elite Aurors. Upon seeing Xiaji, they all flashed warm smiles. They'd all heard of his deeds. Without Xiaji, those children would have remained lost forever. Ultimately, they decided to travel by broomstick. Xiaji had intended to use the Obscurus to fly ahead and guide them, but Dumbledore stopped him. It's best not to let too many people know about this ability of yours. If misused by malicious individuals, it could bring grave consequences, Dumbledore warned gravely. History offered plenty of cautionary tales on this matter. In the end, Xiaji and Dumbledore rode on the same broomstick. Guided by his memory of Rex's confession, Xiaji led a large group of Aurors, all cloaked in invisibility charms, on their journey. Dumbledore also cast an invisibility charm on Xiaji. The sensation was peculiar. A cool, water-like feeling brushed across his skin, and suddenly he vanished, along with a broomstick beneath him. He felt as though only his own eyes were flying. It was truly bizarre. Actually, the camp wasn't far from one of the gathering points, so, after just over an hour of flight, they spotted the hidden werewolf wizard's encampment nestled deep within the woods. As they drew nearer, they witnessed a horrifying scene. One of the werewolf wizards was torturing a barely conscious child. Seeing this, every single aura was consumed with fury.